A woman sprinted at my bulldozer like I was launching missiles, armed with nothing but a clipboard and caffeine rage. She said I was destroying the creek on the land I legally owned, me with permits she couldn't even spell. HOA wanted power. I let her, right into a federal investigation with her name on it. Stick around and tell me in the comments. Has your HOA ever pulled a stunt like this? It started with a sound I now associate with delusion: Velcro sandals power, walking toward authority. I was standing near the creek, clipboard in hand, sipping the kind of lukewarm coffee that tastes like regret, me, when a woman named Trish Albright, self-appointed savior of all things green, came storming toward me like she was protecting the Amazon with a library card, me. She waved a plastic binder stuffed with more highlighted nonsense than a middle school science fair and shouted, "Seize all environmentally harmful activity immediately." Ma'am, I was planting willow stakes. Me, not building an oil rig. But Trish thought I was about to frack her spiritual aura. Me. She had the tone of someone who had once audited a recycling seminar, and now believed she could rewrite federal policy with a scented Sharpie. I told her, with the calm of a man who'd seen real environmental crimes, that I had full county and state permits. She blinked, scoffed, then pulled out a laminated HO bylaw titled, Natural Aesthetic Harmony, and tapped it like it was the U.S. Constitution. These permits do not override local environmental integrity, she snapped, and if arrogance had a scent, it would have been her essential oil mix of pine, peppermint, and misplaced confidence, me. She planted a cardboard sign near the creek that read, Protected Zone. Access denied by order of Chairwoman Albright. I had to turn away so she wouldn't see me laugh. The bulldozer guy looked at me like, me. Is this performance art or a prank? I gave him a small nod to cut the engine. Trish smiled like she'd just ended global warming with her Sharpie. Now here's what she didn't know. I wasn't just Rodney. Me, the polite guy who brought banana bread to HOA meetings and just loves the outdoors. I was the regional supervisor for the State Environmental Protection Agency, and this entire circus, it was bait. We'd received multiple reports of dead fish, herbicide runoff, and creekbank damage over the last year. The HOA had blocked every investigation with a fog of private property and bureaucratic charades. Me, so I moved in, bought a house on Creekside Lane, shook hands, played dumb. Every barbecue, surveillance, every HOA meeting, evidence collection, every awkward Trish rant about tree empathy. Me, fool for a case file. So when Trish said, with theatrical flair, I'll be reporting this violation directly to the state EPA myself, I just nodded like a humble squirrel caught with contraband mulch. Me. I really appreciate your dedication to the environment, I said with a straight face. I even handed her a pen, like a waiter offering dessert to someone walking into a trap, that clipboard of hers. She might as well have used it to sign her own subpoena. My cameras caught it all, her monologue, the cardboard sign, the threat of fines, me and her declaring that my project violated 6 sacred wildlife statutes. The footage was pure gold. If poetic justice wore Croc, she walked off with the confidence of someone who thought she'd just outwitted the government using OA bylaws and PowerPoint clip art. And I let her. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can give a fraud is rope. And baby, Trish was braiding hers with double knots. She thought she could regulate the creek with charisma and cardboard, me. But what happens when the EPA investigates the very woman who tried to boss it around? Oh, buckle up. We haven't even gotten to the forged signatures yet. She returned the next day with a metal sign so official looking I nearly saluted it. It said, Access prohibited by authority of Trish. Trish who? Just Trish. The sign looked like it had been ordered from a Cold War bunker surplus site. Bright red lettering, waterproof seal, and bolted into the ground like it guarded a nuclear secret. The kicker. She didn't even live on my side of the creek. She just appeared like HOA thunder whenever she felt a natural disturbance in her imaginary force field. Me, she dropped off a violation notice with the confidence of someone cosplaying as a FEMA agent. You are now in violation of subsection 12C of our Eco-Enforcement Protocol. Lady, that sounds made up. Because it is. Me. The only protocol I recognized was her need for public applause and legal cosplay. Me. I started mingling with the neighbors under the guise of landscape consultation, which in my case meant grilling hot dogs while asking politely, so is she always like this? The responses, legendary. Me. Chaffined my son for flying a kite. Said it disrupted the nesting owl's GPS, one man whispered. Another added, me. She made my niece cry for watering the lawn at inappropriate hydration hours. Trish had turned AOA enforcement into interpretive theater, me. She wasn't protecting nature, she was starring in a one-woman eco-drama written, directed, and punished by her. Her clipboard. It didn't just hold paper, it held power fantasies. Me, it gleamed like a weapon from an office. Supply dystopia. Tabs color coding. A custom-made badge reading, Chairwoman of Environmental Oversight. That's not a title, it's a fever dream. Every letter she sent came wrapped in passive aggression and 3 different fonts. One notice taped to my door claimed I was destabilizing the local equilibrium for putting in erosion netting me. I was half expecting her to accuse my shoes of harming moss with negative energy. And yet, Trish's biggest offense wasn't her paperwork, it was her reputation. She wasn't just feared. She was worshipped by some and tolerated by others, mostly out of exhaustion. A neighbor said, "I just nod and say thank you. It's easier than getting another informal warning, written in glitter pen." This wasn't leadership, it was a dictatorship in pastel. What she lacked in law, she made up for in laminating me. And the longer I let her pretend to be queen of the creek, the more evidence I gathered that she was also the one killing it. False authority doesn't wear a badge, it wears yoga pants, carries a clipboard, and runs on vibes and printer ink. So what exactly is Trish spraying with that eco-friendly equipment of hers? And why do the fish keep floating belly up near her so-called protected zones? Stick around, because the next clue doesn't just stink, it glows. Trish once told a neighbor that solar panels disturbed migratory birds' spiritual alignment. I thought it was a joke, until she filed a formal complaint on a crystal chakra form, signed in blue glitter pen. I didn't want to believe she was this unhinged until my security footage said otherwise. There she was, clipboard clutched, rain boots on dry ground, pointing at the creek like she was commanding troops in a toxic war. Behind her, a poor maintenance worker in a neon vest, was spraying herbicide with enough force to start a weed revolution. The bottle hissed paish, so did her credibility. My camera zoomed in just in time to catch her giving exact instructions. Soak it right there. The weeds know what they did. The problem. That exact spot, same bend in the creek, was where dead fish kept popping up like bloated subpoenas. It felt like watching a dog report the mailman for trespassing. She poisoned the water and blamed the fish for not evolving. Meanwhile, she kept her karma image squeaky clean by handing out wildflower seed packets like reparations. At one point, she even organized a creekside blessing ceremony, complete with lavender mist and ukulele music, just days after bleaching the banks into a moonscape. I couldn't make this up if I tried. The woman threw pesticides like confetti, then held a gratitude circle for the frogs she just nerve-gassed. Then came the real punchline. Trish filed a formal complaint with the EPA against me. She accused me, of aggressive soil manipulation and hostile aquatic vibration. The letter was 10 pages long and read like a poetry slam for deranged gardeners. She even attached a hand-drawn diagram showing how my boots disrupted silt harmony. I nearly choked on my coffee. It's one thing to pretend to be queen of the HOA, but filing federal complaints with imaginary charges, that's a new flavor of delusion. I forwarded her entire packet to my case file, under the section labeled, Karen's Folklore and Fiction. And here's where irony crashed through the front door wearing combat boots. That complaint she mailed off in dramatic fashion. It landed on my desk, literally, because what Trish couldn't know, is that I wasn't just some stubborn resident with a thing for bulldozers. I was the actual regional supervisor for the State Environmental Protection Agency. I didn't just read EPA forms, I wrote them. I sat at my desk, opened the envelope, and read her allegations like a bedtime story written by an unsupervised adult. Her fate, sealed with postage and glitter. You don't need credentials to cause damage. You just need a clipboard and an overdrawn ego. What happens when the fake ranger files a federal complaint against a real one? You're gonna love who opens the envelope. Trish called a neighborhood meeting so she could explain my environmental violations using a foam board, 3 graphs, and one tragic misunderstanding of science. One chart was titled Eco, Vibe Disruption Patterns, and I swear to you, it included a clip art dolphin crying. The chairs were folding, the tension was permanent. Trish stood front and center like a TED Talk wrapped in a restraining order, waving her laser pointer like it came with a degree. Let's begin with the photosynthesis crisis, she declared, mispronouncing it in a way that sounded like a Greek yogurt flavor. Her graphs were colorful, her logic was not. One neighbor whispered, "Is that graph shaped like a turtle?" Yes, it was. And apparently, my creek project had shocked the chlorophyll out of the local plants. She said it with a straight face, like she just solved climate change with crayons. Her slideshow got more aggressive with every click. She listed plant species that sounded like expired vitamins. "We must protect the lignum waterathis." I blinked. Nobody corrected her. Probably because they feared being hit with the same fate as me, a fabricated violation involving aggressive dirt tones and root chakra contamination. She even pulled out a cardboard model of the creek, complete with hand-glued moss and tiny fish that looked like gummy bears. It was so absurd it looped back around to genius, like watching someone sue a thunderstorm for emotional damage. I played along. nodded at the right times, jotted fake notes in a folder already bursting with her quotes, all recorded on video. "I just know in my heart this is not how the soil should feel," she said, me, clutching her temple like the creek had given her a psychic migraine. I raised my hand and asked if there was a peer-reviewed source. She answered, "My soul has degrees you don't understand." That was the moment I nearly applauded, not out of sarcasm, out of sheer admiration for the performance. Trish didn't just believe her own fantasy, she choreographed it. At the end I stood up and said, "Thank you for enlightening me. I clearly have a lot to learn about eco-vibrations." She nodded solemnly, me. "I'm glad you finally understand the magnitude of your botanical violence." The room applauded, not for me, for her. But I didn't mind. I had everything I needed: full public statements, bad science, worse metaphors, and a community primed for exposure. I walked out with the biggest violation of all, witnessing a grown woman weaponize Latin plant names against the EPA. Sometimes the best way to expose nonsense is to let it speak uninterrupted. She thinks the meeting's over. But next time, she's not holding the mic. Trish launched a petition to evict me like it was her Broadway debut, clipboard in hand, signature quota in mind, and not a single legal clue within a 3-county radius. She hit the porches with a smile so forced it deserved workers' comp. "It's just a formality to keep the neighborhood spiritually aligned," she told Mr. Dalton, who signed with a shrug and a prayer. But after 3 lukewarm signatures, things got Sharpie creative. 7 more appeared overnight, all in what could best be described as serial killer cursive. The problem: my yard had more cameras than a casino, and they captured every stroke of Trish's handwriting, say ain'ts. She forged Betty's name while Betty was out feeding her parrot. She signed for Ron with a left-handed loop, and Ron's left arm's been in a sling for 2 months. One signature even included a smiley face in place of a last name. Her forgery was so bold, I half expected her to initial it HOA, Queen. It wasn't just fraudulent, it was finger paint level criminal. My favorite, she tried to disguise the ink by switching pens between signatures. "Girl, this isn't a ransom note." Then came Walter, old school, paranoid, and sharper than any HOA brochure Trish ever laminated. He knocked at dusk, holding a folder so thin it hummed with vengeance. "You didn't hear this from me," he muttered, but she pulled the same stunt in Pine Blossom Estates. Back in 2017, family of 5, had a birdbath too close to a heritage tree. She made it into an ecological war crime. Inside the folder, newspaper clippings, community emails, and a letter from a desperate mom describing how Trish had forged a wildlife report to shut down a backyard birthday party with balloons. I thanked Walter and added his folder to my growing shrine of HOA horror. Her pattern was now undeniable: claim power, fabricate danger, and bully residents out with a mix of fake science and forged paperwork. This wasn't community leadership, it was suburban cosplay gone rogue. And now, with her petition hanging on the HOA bulletin board like the Declaration of Delusion, I had exactly what I needed: motive, method, history, and high-def video. Trish hadn't just faked signatures, she'd faked reality. Power without accountability always ends in handwriting analysis. What happens when the OA Karen tries to evict a state officer? The ink's still wet, and so is her alibi. Tuesday started with coffee and a complaint about me. Trish had filed it herself, addressed directly to the State Environmental Protection Agency. The subject line read, "Me. Resident threat posing immediate biological hazard." That's one way to describe a man planting wildflowers. Inside, 1,200 words of bureaucratic buzzwords, one Latin phrase she clearly made up, me and her piefies dear RA assistants. As chairman, I possess the authority to override state-level environmental codes. Ma'am, even the font looked embarrassed. The complaint came straight to my desk, me. Not metaphorically, my actual desk. I forwarded it to my internal case file like I was mailing Karma Express overnight. Within hours, I scheduled the real meeting. Not a folding chair HOA sing-along, me, but a state-enforced environmental compliance hearing. The notice, embossed, notarized, and signed with enough legal ink to humble a courthouse, me. The residents of Willow Glen opened their mailboxes expecting another yard gnome regulation, and got a formal summons instead. Trish's reaction could have been bottled and sold as anti-anxiety meds. By Thursday, she'd gone full crisis control, flyers on doorsteps, voicemails correcting the narrative, and one glorious email where she claimed the EPA, accidentally, addressed her by her first name instead of director. That's cute. I arrived at the meeting with everything. Footage of Trish supervising illegal chemical applications, financial records showing HOA funds spent on restricted herbicides, and a chemical analysis confirming the toxins in the creek matched the substances she had purchased, down to the barcode. I even brought a printed copy of her complaint, triple highlighted, It was like handing someone a confession written in Sharpie, underlined in ego. When I stood at the front of the community hall and formally introduced myself, Rodney Barrett, Regional Supervisor, me, State EP, you could feel the atmosphere tighten like a corset on a Thanksgiving turkey. Trish's smile cracked mid-molar. Her eyes darted toward the exit like she was weighing the odds of a cartwheel escape. I let the silence sit just long enough to become awkward. Then I clicked slide 1 of Free's frame of Trish at the creek, pointing where to spray the label on the barrel. Tio Yinduo now to USE na ar wadier. I paused. This was authorized by your HOA chairwoman. The crowd didn't gasp. They exhaled, a collective release of years of her dictatorship wrapped in eco, jargon and garden fines. Slide 2, the purchase order. Me. Slide 3, the fish kill report. Slide 4, Trish's own signature on the chemical invoice, where she'd proudly written, for immediate application. Her voice trembled. Me. This is all being misinterpreted. The truth doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs a well-timed email. So what happens when a villain realizes the PowerPoint wasn't hers to click? Slide 1T indictment. Trish tried to defend herself. Everything I did was based on extensive research, she cried, clutching a 3-ring binder like it held the Dead Sea Scrolls of landscaping. Someone in the back muttered, me. Was Pinterest peer, reviewed now. The room tensed the way church basements do right before someone brings up politics at potluck. Except this wasn't gossip over casserole, me. This was legal reckoning with a side of swamp guilt. I walked them through it all, step by Sharpie, scribbled step, the falsified petition, the fake bylaws. Me. The HOA funds used to purchase commercial herbicide under the expense line, Creek Enhancement Project. I held up receipts, stamped, dated, and digitally traced. This one, I said, it shows the exact chemical that killed the protected frogs. A man with a flannel shirt and HOA name tag stood up and shouted, "You used our HOA money to murder the frogs lady." The room gasped. Me. Not because it was false, but because it was true. Her confidence collapsed like a folding chair at a barbecue. Trish fumbled for a comeback. I was following Eco Law 17B, she blurted. I raised an eyebrow. Could you point me to that statute? She froze. The crowd turned toward her with that look suburban mobs get right before they vote someone off the committee and into permanent exile. It's, in my notebook. Ma'am, she cited legislation from her diary. Her last line of defense was a bullet journal and 2 pressed leaves. The vote wasn't close. It wasn't even a vote, me. It was a standing ovation disguised as a democratic process. One by one, neighbors raised their hands, some with tears, some with receipts, and one with a garden gnome for emotional support. Me. Trish was stripped of all titles, privileges, and imaginary Creek credentials. The HOA board moved to dissolve her position, report her to the county, and ban her from handling anything with a clipboard, whistle, me or letterhead. She didn't walk out. She deflated out. Then came the final blow. I handed over a packet to law enforcement, complete with timelines, documentation, and her signature at the bottom of everything. With the same signature she used on forged petitions. The officer looked at it, chuckled, and said, "We'll take it from here." As she was escorted to her car, someone called out, "Hey Trish, what happens when your eco law gets you real jail time?" No answer. Just the sound of her tote bag hitting the curb and one last laminated flyer floating in the wind. The best disinfectant isn't bleach, it's sunlight. But wait, what happened to the creek, me? And what did Rodney do with her precious sign? Oh, just you wait. Restoration never looked this petty. 2 weeks later, I stood by the creek. The frogs were back. So were the fish, me. The only thing missing was the sound of Trish yelling at ducks about spiritual boundaries. The water flowed clear, the soil looked like it forgave us, me. And the only signs left were the real ones, posted by actual scientists who don't use glitter pens or chakra stickers. The EPA crew arrived like a jazz band, loud, precise, and oddly graceful. They brought soil restoration tools, wetland botanists, and one glorious bulldozer. Yes, the bulldozer. The same machine Trish once claimed threatened the natural order of aquatic peace. It now carried out native plantings and bank stabilization like a construction symphony. If irony were a power tool, this bulldozer was a full-blown remix. A few neighbors even clapped when it rolled in, as if the machine had just won Best Supporting Actor in a suburban drama. The community came together in ways that would have made a Hallmark movie feel under budget. Walter donated new signage made from recycled wood and common sense. Me. Betty hosted a Creek rebirth brunch and served frog-shaped cookies. Even Ron, whose signature Trish forged, painted a small mural on his fence that read, "The only thing toxic here is gone." The HOA board, now led by 3 retired teachers and a retired Army medic named June, passed new transparency rules. First order of business: ban clipboards with more than 5 tabs. As for Trish, she fled. Me. Word spread she'd moved to Arizona for healing. I'd believe it if she wasn't last seen trying to join another HOA by claiming her cat was a certified soil consultant. Her prosecution was pending. Me. Her reputation was confetti, and her most iconic creation, the access prohibited by authority of Trish sign, now had a new home. I mounted it in my garage, right above the urinal. It squeaked every time I flushed, and somehow that just felt right. Because here's the thing, leadership isn't about volume, it's about value. Trish shouted about law while poisoning ecosystems. She forged unity and called it enforcement. But like I always say, the louder someone shouts about rules, the less they want you reading the fine print. The bulldozer she feared turned out to be the hero, and her crusade, just a laminated meltdown in a saga of fake power. This story wasn't just about one clipboard crusader losing her grip, it was about a community finally waking up. It was about what happens when people stop nodding and start noticing. About the kind of strength it takes to push back, not with fists, but with laughter, and a whole lot of well-timed patience. So if you've ever felt small in the face of someone pretending to be big, remember this: the creek runs clean now. The frogs are singing again. And the only thing banned from my yard, ego dressed as authority. Let me ask you this, have you ever had to stand up to someone who weaponized the rules just to feel powerful? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this story hit home, if it made you laugh, shake your head or pump your fist at the final flush, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. Because out here, justice doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it drives a bulldozer.